Every year, there's a World Leaders Summit at the UN. How come the media never covers it? You know, the UN being the United Nations, the United Nations, there's some 180 different countries are involved in it, but yet none of our media sources ever cover it. You got to dig deep in order to find it. By the way, speaking of the United Nations, why is it the the ongoings of the United Nations never covered, like such as the 17 Sustainable Goals and how it affects our everyday life? You know, like especially in regards to education, it's interesting. And on that note about education, I see how notice how that the alphabet agenda is always being pushed even onto our younger children, our preschoolers, our 5, 7, 6, 7, 8 year olds, elementary school, which Florida and Governor DeSantis tried to combat against recently in his bill, which people protested against, which is ridiculous. But before I go off, is again in regards to education, we see how important it is to teach for children, for adults, 30s, 20s, 30s, 40s, who still do not know about investing, about owning a business, C Corp, S Corp. They don't know about these things. Even the very basics, like what is inflation? What is a depression? How do you define the two? What is the difference between 10% and 20% GDP? What is GDP? What is, and again, in regards to inflation, like why does it fluctuate every year? People don't know as well. And also in regards to the hidden tax, which is what inflation is called. People don't know about the hidden tax. It's a thing called lifestyle inflation. People make more money, they spend more money. No, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to live below your means. People don't ever do that. They're not taught that in schools. Instead, they're taught how to be workers, how to push a button, how to punch a card, push a button. And now, to this day, recently, again, our children are being taught a bunch of junk, sexually explicit junk that they do not need to be hearing about. Instead of you know, money and wealth building and all those things, which will benefit them obviously in their lives as they get older. Okay, and something I also want to talk about some benefit them in their lives is exercise. Yeah, exercise. I mean, look, we're seeing Cosmopolitan has a picture of a very large woman, Tessa, I think her name Blanchard, and Lizzo are very large women, and that's called healthy. That's being touted as healthy, whereas there is a fitness guru, a woman who's in shape. Um, I forget her name, Lillian or so, but she's in shape. She called out Lizzo, and she got destroyed for saying Lizzo is unhealthy. It's going to lead to a lot of cardiovascular diseases, a lot of health problems. She was being destroyed. And speaking of being destroyed, why is not there ever any negative reports or information coming out about the jab? Because there are people coming out and saying that they're sick because they didn't know the long-term effects, the long-term ramifications of getting that jab, and to say putting this unknown substance, foreign substance, directly into your veins. Nobody knew about that, but yet people are coming back to getting sick. People are dying. People are being put in the ER for a very long extended period of time, and yet people, that the media is hush hush about it. The CDC here in Atlanta is hush hush. They don't want to say anything about it. Interesting. We never hear about it. The government doesn't hear it. Doesn't want to talk about it. Even I remember, many people would speak out about it. Say in the sports world, maybe coaches, maybe players, and it is just hush hush. Like no, and majority of the time they're going to get fined. The voices will be suppressed. Speaking of some voices getting suppressed, it's just like what's going on with the transgender movement. There is a video. I haven't put it out yet, But there's a video, and even if you think about Matt Walsh, amazing documentary which came out just a couple weeks back, there's a video which points out that the voices of those women on Penn State, those young women who speaking out against Will Thomas, are their voices are being suppressed. It's hush hush against them. And also that there was a psychologist brought in, which pretty much was already 100% on board with the LGBT alphabet agenda, the alphabet narrative, and said you're going to believe in this stuff and you're going to like it, or else we're going to kick you off the team, probably remove your scholarship, whatever. So it's they put the psychologists and the team and the NCAA put their feet down, and it's the girls who had to get on board, even though they're obviously uncomfortable, especially when this biological male is walking around in the buff with aroused in a locker room full of girls. Okay. But yeah, this stuff is being forced onto our college kids, forced onto children, high school kids. Something that I wonder what isn't being, I wouldn't say forced, but pushed, encouraged in schools to our college kids. It says like creationism. They're talking about Satanism. I see students coming back, young students coming back with class assignments on about the 5 pillars of Islam, but yet creationism versus evolution, which is being pushed, the idea of evolution, because it's already been debunked several times throughout history, not just by creationists, but even by atheist scientists. They've debunked evolution. It's an idea. It goes against true science. It's the laws of actual science. But yet it's still being pushed in our schools, encouraged in our taught in our science textbooks. I know about all of this stuff, about the billions of years and hundreds of millions and 100,000 years and Cretaceous period and Jurassic period and all that stuff. I know about all this stuff. But I knew very little in regards to creationism. Up until in my 20s when I started studying this stuff for myself. I actually dug deep. 2 Timothy 2:15. I started digging deep and studying for myself to show myself approved unto the higher power, unto Yah. Interesting. Another thing, in regards to Islam, you see statue of Baphomet in Detroit, Michigan. I don't know statues of the 10 Commandments. Oh, yeah, that's right. That stuff got taken down. Yeah. But speaking of Islam, why are there any politicians actually speaking out about the real dangers, the real horrors of Islam, about the mass genocides going on today in Northern Africa, Central Africa, slavery, which is still going on today in the Middle East, as well as, and female genital mutilation, which is what Ilhan Omar escaped in Somalia, by the way. Oh man, she don't even want to talk about this stuff. Rashida Tlaib don't want to talk about that stuff. There are Sudanese and Ethiopians being massacred on a daily in these Central African and Northern African nations on a daily. Like I said, modern day slavery in the Middle East. It's the longest running slave trade, which is still ongoing, but yet people always want to talk about the transatlantic stuff, which happened from the West Africans, where the Europeans brought over West Africans to the Americas, to North America in particular, and the Caribbean. Newsflash: every ethnicity, because there's only one race, every ethnicity under the sun has been enslaved by another ethnicity at some point in time. Not just the blacks and the whites, but also the Chinese, Japanese, the Irish, Northern Africans, Central Africans, Haitians have been enslaved. The Russians, everyone has been enslaved at some point. Indians as well. So why does that stuff never talked about? But yet the somewhat 2 or close to 300 years of slavery is what's being pushed, and that's the narrative which is being warped into making you think CRT, which is being pushed in our schools. public indoctrination camps to our young, impressionable children who don't know the difference and cannot properly discern. And so they think, oh, CRT, that the black people are constantly suppressed, and the white people, which there is no such thing as white people. I mean, nobody is the color of my paper, and I am not the color of my shirt. I'm not black. But yet, there are suppressors and there are oppressors. So when am I ever going to be able to get ahead? That's the empty thing that CRT doesn't allow. The empty answer that CRT does not ever get to. I mean, but there are people who actually have been who actually have gotten ahead. I'm not just talking about Tyler Perry, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson. No, but I'm talking about I forget his name, but there's another channel we talked about him, and he was actually the first black billionaire, and no one's heard of him. First black billionaire. He was around in the 50s and 60s. He made his money in the 50s and 60s at the height of segregation, and when Dr. King and Malcolm X were coming up, they never talked about. And what's strange is, not just any time of the year, but Black History Month. These guys are never talked about. It is about Sidney Crosby and Jackie Joyner Kersee and Jackie Robinson and like, okay, yeah, we all heard about them. But what about those who actually made it? They actually achieved the American dream. They amassed a lot of money. No, black people who amassed a lot of money, owned businesses, constructed homes, donated, were amazing philanthropists. Don't hear about them. And another thing, what you do hear about, again, is going back to the Pride, which is not just a month, centered to a month. It's year round. I mean, it's celebrated by our government, by our state governments, with Empire State Building being multicolored, being lit up in multicolored lights, or the United States Capitol raising that flag, the multicolored flag, the rainbow flag. It's always constantly pushed in our music, in our media, in our movies, in television, man, even in our comic books. This stuff is being talked about. Cartoons, again, upon impressionable children. We don't learn about this stuff, but yet we learn about this stuff. The stuff that could benefit our lives and greatly enhance our lives, versus the stuff that really amounts to just a bunch of nothing. Especially when in regards to it only representative of about 1.5% of the actual population of the country. Again, 2 Timothy 2:15 is what I mentioned. Because first you want to expose, we already been exposed to so much evil in this world. And I just touched the tip of the iceberg. I haven't even gotten deep. But I did give a lot of different topics, a lot of things. You can rewind this video and go back and study. Go back and search, dig deeper for yourself, which is studying for yourself. Because the government and these public indoctrination camps, schools, colleges, and woke universities, they're not telling us. They're suppressing this information, such as like who built America, how was this country built, on the backs of who was this country built. And this information is being suppressed. Whereas when the media knows flat out, instead of reporting the same old junk or the same old fluff, useless fluff, like, oh man, we always hearing about January 6th, always hearing about, they don't talk about the jab anymore, interesting. They don't talk about the race riots anymore, interesting. They talk about January 6th, but they don't talk about the summer of blood, which more people died. Jack Del Rio, defense coordinator for the Washington Redskins, was fined $100K for talking about that, talking about the summer of blood. Interesting. This stuff has never been talked about, but yet stuff that doesn't even benefit our lives are large people being touted as healthy all of this stuff is being pushed. It's being pushed up and shoved down our throats, like Chaz or whatever. It's being shoved down our throats. St. George Floyd is being shoved down our throats. But what about David Dorn and the little 8-year-old girl who was murdered by these riots? It's not talked about. It's not talked about. Ahmaud Arbery in Brunswick, Georgia. It's just willingly suppressing information so that we don't hear that side of the story. And when other people do report about it, outliers, like say like some rogue YouTube channel, it may have like 1,000 subscribers, he or she's reporting about this stuff, or maybe even you might hear it from a conservative channel like Fox News or whoever. They might be reporting about this stuff. It's always called a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy. Nah, it's a conspiracy, man. People don't know what they're saying. A bunch of kooks, bunch of clowns. It might have some information that's worth listening to. That's worth me investigating on my own. But yet again, this stuff isn't talked about. Hey, no, and both sides of the coin, by the way, two wings of the same bird. So I really don't trust either one. But why? It's just one that I kind of trust. A lesser evil I trust a little bit more than the other one. I just want to ask, why are they not telling us these things? Do they not want us to know? Do they not want us to get ahead? The middle class, which is being wiped out, and the class which is at or below the poverty line, which is going to suffer more and more and more because of the policies and the government, which knows they should not be spending more than they make. What did they bring in, that is. But yet they are. And they have been doing this for decades. Spending more than was brought in. And still sending money over hundreds of millions or billions of dollars to foreign countries when we got a whole bunch of junk going on now. When people are suffering here in this country, it's still sending money over there. Somebody make it make sense. Until next time.